So we're going to see some of what our witnesses saw on January 6th. Let's see the video, please. But please be advised that it contains graphic images and strong language, which many may find disturbing.
Multiple capital entries! Multiple capital entries! We're still taking metal, sharpened objects, missiles, to include bottles and rocks, and hand-thrown chemical-grade fireworks.
Welcome back to Bad Photographers. This week marks the anniversary of January 6th, a day that reshaped the media, the country, and the role that photojournalists play as they're documenting history in real time. In today's episode, we're joined by Pulitzer Prize winner, photojournalist, Mr. Jon Cherry, whose photos from inside and around the chaos at the Capitol became part of historical record. This isn't just about the awards or the iconic photos, but also about the weight of being there, pressing the shutter, and having to live with the photographs afterwards. Let's go ahead and get into it. First and foremost, we want to welcome you to Bad Photographers.
Hell yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I feel very welcome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're excited to have you here. One, because chatting with you all the time, you tell such incredible stories with vigor and passion and emotion to where I don't know if you realize it, but I know I tear up. Maybe not on the outside, but my heart cries with emotion for the pictures that you can paint with words. And where I just fill in a bunch of ramblingness, you do as a true artisan. But Janiqua, before I really hijack this and really inflate it, I want to get into why we're here today is behind the shots, behind the photos. And more specifically for you, Mr. Jon Cherry, is the infamous day of January 6th that not just America, but the rest of the world saw unfold in front of them, which was complete chaos. And we all know a lot of that's played out within the legal system and the media. But for you, Jon, what I want to know, what we want to know, and the story we want you to tell is, first and foremost, who is Jon Cherry today, and who is Jon Cherry as a photographer walking in to January 6th?
So the Jon Cherry today, who I am today, I would say is January 6th was an interesting day for me because as devastating as a day as it was, I think for our country and all the controversy that came from the conspiracy theories and the facts of the day that are constantly disputed, and as traumatic of a day as it was for so many different people, it really changed my life in a lot of ways. The trauma of it changed my life in a lot of ways, and it's been such a challenge to overcome all of that. But at the same time, the notoriety that work elevated my career to, and obviously, being a part of the Pulitzer team for that has opened up a lot of different opportunities. And now, a Pulitzer Prize is not a golden ticket. You still have to work really hard to continue to stay in this industry. But I am looked at from the civilian population, not as much from the photography and photojournalism and documentary photography population, but from everyone else who kind of doesn't do this work, but really appreciates it as an authority on certain things. And that's always been kind of contentious for me because I just kind of feel like a guy. But the more I've, operated within that space, the more I've found a voice for that, and definitely, kind of capitalized on those opportunities because they've been so plentiful. So who I am today, I still continue to work as a photojournalist and documentary photographer, but I also do I'm very heavily involved in the arts world, and I serve on the boards for several nonprofits and steering committees for arts initiatives. And I have a couple of arts initiatives, larger scale arts initiatives that I am currently managing and photographing as well, that have stemmed from small offshoots from stories that I have done and that I've committed to. And that feels really great. And I talk at colleges all the time. And
well, I have a question. So how welcoming or open were you, or were you more caught off guard as people were coming to you to be a voice of reason and to be a sound of a pillar of truth or a pillar of continuity within the space?
Yeah, I think I was pretty welcome into it. It definitely still caught me off guard because I wasn't expecting not everyone, obviously, but I wasn't expecting to be regarded in such a way that People wanted to hear what I had to say about things, and I've always had stuff to say. I've always had pretty strong opinions, and I've always had this will to learn and it kind of exceed outside of my boundaries. But it wasn't really until I found photojournalism and documentary photography that I felt like anybody actually started listening. And so I've been kind of always on this mission to be heard, but also listen. So I try to be a good listener, and I try to take the other people who want to learn on a journey with me, one that they can't necessarily go on, and be a representative for the people that will listen. It's been a really great privilege, more than it has been a burden, to be able to be a good representative for those who can't be there. Whenever I first started into this industry, I was talking to my mom earlier, actually, and kind of in preparation for this interview. A lot of the time that she hates the work that I do because it puts me into really vicarious positions. She has told me so many times that she can't even look at the work that I did on January 6th because it makes her sick to imagine me there. And a lot of other work that I've done. I have an exhibition right now that is like a lot of that kind of work. It's 41 different images, and some of them are really harrowing situations. Some stuff from January 6th, stuff from national disasters, riots. It's kind of like a 5-year retrospective of the past 5 years of my career. It's also in line with a really tumultuous era in American history, so it kind of lines up in that way. But to kind of talk about your earlier question too about where was I 5 years ago, essentially. On January 6th, I had just entered the industry about 5 months before, and I think a pretty
crazy
non-traditional way. I was originally really emboldened and impassioned by what I saw happening in the streets during the Breonna Taylor protests here in Louisville. I went out on that first night, and I was super pissed off, and I was really feeling helpless because I was unemployed for the first time in my entire life. I had no experience with doing that kind of work at all. I had just bought a camera maybe a year before that and was just trying to use it as a side hustle while I worked 2 other jobs. And it was kind of like my last ditch effort to make some meaning of what was happening in the world that was really confusing and angering for me. So it was like, I often talk about it like this. It was like either I was going to pick up a camera or I was going to pick up a gun. You see all the armed people at the protests. You see all the militia guys at the protests from, either side. And it's just like, which one of those would I have been? I don't really know. And that's how screwy everything was. That's how confusing everything was for me. So, when I went out into the streets, I did like almost 2 straight months of photographing every single day. Like went out every single day, had nothing better to do. And very quickly, those photographs that I was just posting on Instagram started gaining traction within my community, and was kind of elected to be a storyteller during these protests. And I had pretty like strict protection from the people that were within the occupied protest zone. I remember so many times going into these protests, and there would be like out of town protesters that would get in my face and be like, "Hey man, you can't take pictures here." But the people that were from there would like get in their way and get in their face and be like, "He's cool. Like it's all good."
Yeah.
And
you were embedded at that point.
So, oh my God, so embedded. So embedded that, sometimes it got me into trouble. When I remember when I first got into the industry, my first assignment was on August 11th of 2020 from Getty. And then after that, it was a really, not mundane assignment, but it was pretty low risk. They needed me to take some pictures of some billboards that Oprah had bought of Breonna Taylor, 26 different billboards to represent her 26 years of life in Louisville. And after that first assignment, I was like, can I ask you guys for assignments? I know you just emailed me, but if I have an idea, can I pitch something to you? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. I was like, okay, well, I'm embedded with a black militia here in a couple of days. And they said that I was allowed to photograph like within their ranks. Are you guys interested in this at all? And they were like, hell yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
What?
So that's how that relationship with Getty really started, was Sandy Sirik reaching out to me and saying, hey, can you photograph some billboards? And then me reaching. Also, I shot the shit out of those billboards. I like took a 10-stop neutral density filter in the middle of the day and was like taking car trails. I went to like 12 different billboards and just like really overdid it. And yeah, so, I'm embedded with that militia, and I got really interested in extremist groups. And then, one thing leads to another, and I'm just like so fascinated by Trumpism and by right-wing extremism and white nationalism and things that have always interested me in the past. I think just because of where I've grown up, I've always been kind of adjacent to that in the different industries that I've worked in, always been like really adjacent to a lot of that, but not on any official standard capacity, just close to it enough that I always ask questions, but I can never find an excuse to be close enough to it to have those questions really answered. So I remember whenever Trump lost the 2020 election and everybody's really pissed on the right.
I'm sorry, but I have to correct you. He is not president-elect. The media does not call the election.
Joe Biden! Joe Biden! Antifa! Antifa!
Far-right groups like the Proud Boys, linked to white supremacy and violence, made themselves visible at Saturday's event.
There are people on both sides that are turning out today.
Fearing potential clashes with counter-protesters, DC police shut down streets and disallowed weapons.
And I remember being in like a Parler group chat, and some guys were talking about going to the Capitol on Washington on January 6th. And they were going to, march on the Capitol. And there were a lot of different opinions about what they should do, what they shouldn't do. But there was a lot of talk about, unleashing the Kraken, or releasing the Kraken, and the Q storm, and stopping the steal. And then I got in contact, it was on January 3rd, 2nd or 3rd, there was a protest at Mitch McConnell's house because he had just said, I think like on the Senate floor, that Trump should give it up. And so people turned on Mitch McConnell. And there was this really interesting moment where at this protest at his house, which was not very far from my house that I lived in at the time, just like two-minute drive away, where there were BLM protesters and Stop the Steal protesters at his house at the same time, and they were sharing a megaphone.
Whoa!
And I have some photos of that too. They were sharing a megaphone because they showed.
Mitch McConnell has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Mitch McConnell has got to go!
What we were watching is the debrief.
Him out! Vote him out!
Showed up and they were pissed off at each other because of the other's presence, right? But then they were like, "Oh, we all don't like this politician." So there's
Look at
leaders from both sides.
Unifying the people.
Yeah,
if anything
yeah.
can make you
Louise.
unified in hate, it's Mitch McConnell. 100%.
It's a human turtle. I mean, it's a human turtle. He's not from planet Earth. I mean,
No.
there's no way he's a human being.
The running joke is that it's a spell that gets him out of bed every morning. That's the...
So this is when we talk about luck and placement, this was a start of this. This is the catalyst for all of it. On November 18th, I had accrued enough information to think whatever is going to happen in Washington, D.C. is about to be historic. I don't know what it's going to be, but I think they're going to try to break into the Capitol and kill everybody.
Especially if you were in Parler. I was on Parler too. It was insane. Insane.
So yeah, it was insane, and it was one of the reasons it got shut down was because how completely unmoderated it was. I sent this pitch to Getty on November 18th of 2020. These dates mean a lot to me, so I have all of them kind of saved in my brain.
Which makes you an
for some
incredible
reason.
storyteller.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the timeline is something that has always been really shocking to me because everything just happened so quickly as well. So November 18th, I sent this pitch to Getty after I had kind of accrued all this information. And it was actually after I had a really encouraging conversation with a colleague where he was pretty much trying to encourage me to show editors that I was willing to travel for work. Instead of just covering my state and my region, that I was willing to go outside of my region that I was researching outside of my region, that I was keeping like a national lens for my work. And so I sent this pitch and they shot it down pretty immediately, kind of saying, that it was going to be a rally and there are a bajillion freelancers in DC that they could lean on. And so it's like, okay, cool. But I was still planning on going anyway, but I had virtually no connections with the industry. Like I had pitched something to The Guardian and worked something out with The Guardian on a previous assignment in Louisville. I'd done something for Vanity Fair like pitching photos, kind of like the old fashioned way of like looking up the masthead and just saying like, hey, I have a bunch of photos that nobody's ever seen before, and would you guys like to publish them? And they said yes, and we'll pay you. And I was like, oh,
Nice.
that's cool too. Yeah. So, you know, pitching this and then getting shot down didn't really discourage me because I was planning on going anyway. But then I think it was on January 4th or 5th, one of the editors from Getty reached out and said, hey, this is actually going to be, I think, bigger than we thought it was going to be. Are you still coming? And if you are, come for us. And I was like, hell yeah. Can you pay for my travel and pay for my hotel? And they said yes. And then I went to my car to start it when I was leaving that McConnell protest, and it wouldn't start. So I was like, can you guys pay for a rental car for me to get there too? And they said yes.
Nice.
So, and my partner at the time and I, we'd actually met during the protests, and then eventually we got together after I was with somebody else, and then we ended up breaking up, and then me and this friend ended up getting together, and our relationship was like brand new. We were together for like a week.
Nice.
But we had teamed up so much through all these other like chaotic scenarios that it kind of made sense. So we drove to DC and checked into this hotel, and I don't want to be too gross here, but we checked into this hotel and it was disgusting. And it was a huge room. And this is honestly, I'm going to prepare you to cut here, because when we were going, like we didn't take off our shoes. We kept everything like up on shelves so that it wouldn't get contaminated. And I went and I grabbed the remote control to turn on the TV, and the remote control had this sticky residue on it.
Yeah.
And you know how, I don't know if you guys have ever used personal lubricants before, but whenever they dry on something, they leave this residue. And I was like, I bet you if I run this underwater, it'll reconstitute and it'll prove that this is lube. Yeah. And so I ran the remote underwater and it reconstituted, it turned back into lube again. And I was like, we're getting the fuck out of here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we checked into the Phoenix Plaza Hotel or whatever, right there by the Capitol, 2:00 in the morning, exhausted, 11-hour drive, checked into one hotel, checked that out, got the refund, did all that stuff. So I don't think we got to bed till like 3:00 in the morning. And then woke up the next day later than I wanted to, woke up at like 8:30 or something like that, scrambled to get out of bed and get all the stuff, went downstairs, stopped at like the second floor, which was the like the mess hall or the breakfast bar or whatever, looked in and just curious because I heard all these people. I looked in and there's like Trump flags all over the place and like dudes in armor and shit like at the breakfast bar. And I was like,
crazy.
And I was like, nope. All right, let's keep going. And so we walked out, and the very first thing that we saw when I stepped on the sidewalk and started walking towards the Capitol was a group of Chinese American immigrants that were all protesting, carrying this huge banner saying, no CCP in the US. I took like a couple of very bad photographs of them, just trying to like kind of get in my sea legs or whatever. And they looked over at me while I was kneeling on the sidewalk photographing, and they're all pointing at me and they were saying, fuck Black Lives Matter, fuck Black Lives Matter.
Whoa.
And angry. And these are like all tiny, little, sweet looking Asian women, you know, like, and they're middle-aged Asian women. And they're like, fuck Black Lives Matter, fuck Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, why? What did I do?
Damn it, John.
I know. So to preface all of this, I was on a team of photographers. There were a ton of, maybe there might have been 10 Getty photographers, you know, assigned to this, and we were all assigned certain positions. So we had, you know, chief photographer Win McNamee inside of the Capitol photographing the House floor during the joint session. Couple others inside, couple others assigned to this side of the Capitol, that side of the Capitol. I was assigned specifically to the east side of the Capitol. And so that's where I went at first and was kind of told to stay there, and was not in a position to file from camera. Like, I didn't know anything about any of this stuff. Like, not even like sitting down and filing from my laptop as it went. Like, it wasn't something that I was used to working quickly in that way. And so I remember being kind of nervous walking around within the crowd on the east side. You know, this is kind of how I reference it. It was almost like every big, mean, racist guy that I had ever met in my entire life that made me feel bad about myself was there. And And so I was, kind of keeping my distance from folks and like not getting in people's faces. There were a couple of protesters that were there that had anti-Trump signs. One of them was a trans woman. Saw these people rip the sign out of her hands, and then, telling, like throwing all these insults at her, threatening to kill her, and then also saying like, just wait till she leaves and we'll follow her, or wait till he leaves and we'll follow him, just being really mean and threatening. And, I was photographing the whole thing, and people, I guess because I was photographing, they thought that I was like there to support them. And so they would like come up to me afterward and were like, yeah, we really showed that tranny this and that. And I'm like, oh my God, it was just so hateful. And they're like, one guy in particular was, yeah, well, just wait till he fucking leaves. Wait till he leaves and we get him, And so tensions are high, and I see this big group of people on one of the lawns on the east side of the Capitol and realize, oh, this is all the Proud Boys. This is all, recognize some of the people that were in the group. And they go over, and I have a photograph of this. I haven't ever seen any other photograph of this, but on this big plastic table, they had this giant scroll, like 10 foot long, 3 foot wide, about scroll. And it was a huge declaration of war against the United States government. And they were all going up and signing it one by one at this table. And so photographed some of that, and then was kind of like making my way through the crowd and photographing. And I remember one particular person that I met, big black dude. He had scarred up black lips, pock-faced, really like big, broad, huge guy. He was wearing like a fur cape, and he had like a fur Ruski hat on. And I photographed him, and then I walked up to him, and I said, I like your cape, or like, thanks for letting me take a picture or something like that. And he gets real close to me, and he says, if I see you again today, I'm gonna fucking kill you. And I remember seeing photos and videos later on, and that was the guy who was one of the people that was grabbing on to and assaulting John Manchillo with the AP, and was calling him Antifa, kind of was like throwing him around in the crowd, and they were messing him up during all of that. And I never actually saw that guy again during the rest of the riot. So anyway, so there's a moment where, led by Joe Biggs and Ethan Nordian and Zachary Reel and a couple of the other, Dominic Pizzola, all the kind of main Proud Boys of the day, that led this effort. As they were facing towards the to the east, so they were facing towards the Supreme Court, and this is one of the more notable photographs of the day. That was the entry photo, the first photo of the Pulitzer package. They led like this. It was like a photo op in a way, where they all looked towards the cameras and they were like, all right, guys, we're gonna let out a war cry. And then they let out this big like scream, and then took that photo along with a bunch of other photographers. And they then started the march, headed north, and went down Constitution Avenue west. And then they met kind of around the Peace Monument. But okay, so another interesting kind of funny moment, like slapstick moment in all of this was, so this was a Trump rally, right? So Trump rallies that were out in the open like that always had vendors. And so these guys, they kind of took a break from signing this declaration of war to the start of the riot, where they're like going and buying chili dogs and nachos and t-shirts and hats.
You gotta be fueled up,
like a goddamn cherry blossom festival.
Go to the local 7-Eleven, get some food.
Like all the vendors, they're buying sweatshirts and all that stuff, and then they reconvene. And I remember stopping to smoke a cigarette and speaking to this protester from Missouri named Billy. And I remember looking him up later on. I think he got arrested a couple months after that. He's a really tall guy. He kind of looked like Dennis Miller, if Dennis Miller was jacked. And really big guy. And I like stepped off to the side and I was just like smoking a cigarette. And I was like, man, what do you think about today? And he was like, I think that everybody here is talking about you. They think you're Antifa. And if you keep getting close to them, I think that one of those guys is probably going to stab you. And he's like, I think you seem like a pretty cool guy, and that's why I'm telling you all of this. So I would just suggest that you keep your distance. And I was like, heard. And
so you don't have any like body armor or anything on?
No, I do. I have a body armor on and a helmet, and I had a gas mask on. I think I had it like wrapped around, like hanging off of my belt or something like that. Which then, talk about another, like, we'll talk about bad photographers. I was such a bad photographer for this, and there's a few different criteria why, of how underprepared I knew something really bad was going to happen, but that didn't go into me being arrested right?
Mhm.
I was not rested for this at all. I was slightly underdressed. It was really cold and super dry that day. I was not familiar with the landscape at all. This was my first time in Washington, D.C. It was on January 6th. Like when we got in that night, that was my first time. And I brought the wrong gas mask filters. I brought the filters for my half-face gas mask, and I had my full-face gas mask. So useless gas mask.
Oh, fucked. Oh, yeah.
And I forgot I had recently changed out the straps for my cameras and had not replaced them. So I didn't have any straps for either of my cameras. So I had to always carry one with my 70 to 200, and then I had another one with my 24 to 70. One was mirrorless. I had just bought it. It was the first day that I was using it. And the other one was my Nikon D850, and I didn't have an adapter. So I only had, I think I did have an adapter. But either way, 2 different lens mounts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Same
there's a
brand
lot of
camera.
You just listed a lot of questionable things, John. Well, I will tell you the most questionable is the brand new camera on your very first assignment. Is that maybe I'm just getting old. You give me a brand new camera on a very high fucking viz assignment first time, I'm shitting on myself. I'm stressed out.
Between the two,
I
would say the most questionable is the lack of camera straps. Because,
dude,
I think that you would be like, let me get my vest, let me get my gas mask, no camera straps. It's nuts.
No camera straps. So I'm just walking around with a camera and then having to, if I want to use the other camera, so it's either 70 to 200 or it's 24 to 70.
Yeah.
So I just take it, put it back in my bag, take the other one out of my bag, pull it out. So I'm kind of stuck with one or the other depending on where I'm at. And eventually I think I just went with the 24 to 70 just because it was more versatile. But
you won't it's hard to get stabbed at 200 meters. Yeah.
It is.
200 millimeters, 200 millimeter lens, a little bit harder to,
theoretically. It depends on whether they have throwing knives or not.
I mean, if you have a 50, again, it's a lot. They can get full thrust. Right.
Yeah, you just have to require the criminal to be creative. That's what we're That's what we're going for.
Yes, to be more creative.
Yes.
And so eventually I think I just kind of stuck with the 24 to 70, which was on the new camera. And so pretty much all of those shots, except for a few, were all with this new camera.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Which I've always wanted to tell Nikon and be like, hey,
hook a brother up.
Yeah.
Hey, shout out Andy Dunaway. Andy, I know you're listening. I know I'm going to send this to you in the DMs when it releases. Andy Dunaway. Andy Dunaway is a prior Air Force, prior combat camera. He was one of my first mentors. I
didn't know that.
Yeah, and he's Stacy Pearsall's husband. Stacy Pearsall was the first female military photographer to really become a face for female photographers and the DoD. She won MILFOG. So when you had like JT and a bunch of all them other ones that were, when the MILFOG, Stacy Pearsall was up there competing with them, for a couple of years. She was on Oprah, right? Stacy was even on Oprah to talk about her photo
veteran
shoots.
Photo project or something like that.
And now she has her veteran, on PBS. She has that. And then Andy, again, one of the coolest. He took care of me as a little young, ignorant Airman Griffin, coming to combat camera, and just took care of me. And now he's one of the last standing military people that actually work for Nikon still today. So again, Andy,
I keep learning that the more and more that all these camera reps are such G's.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes I underestimate them just because they're in this like kind of weird service position, and I'm like, this guy's just a salesman. And then I look at their work, or I hear their history, and I'm like, fuck,
holy shit,
this guy's a legend. Oh my god,
yeah. And so it was great. So when I'll share one more thing, and then I obviously want to go back into this immersive, incredible experience that you're sharing with it. But I bring this up because I know Benny's probably going to listen to this. And like we're at the Build Expo this year, and Andy was there because for Nikon, and I didn't know. Someone told me like, "Oh, Andy's over the Nikon booth." I'm like, leaving right away, and I'm gonna go say hi to him. And he actually he coined me, which is wild, right? And so,
and coined you.
And so like for like how military individuals, a lot of time you'll get coined from like a senior leader or someone that's visiting your organization, or like I need to hook you up. I know because I haven't seen you since I created the Airman Magazine coin. I created an Airman Magazine coin because since 1957, since the Airman Journal, came into existence, there's never been an Airman magazine challenge coin. And so, during my time there, I sat down with the team, came up with some designs, and we created this historic legacy coin for the first time in 2024, which is pretty wild to think about. It took that long since 1957 to create one of those, but I have one coming your way because I grabbed a couple as I was heading out the door. I slid open Bob's drawer and grabbed a handful. So I'm gonna send one out to you, John. But so a long story short, maybe not so much. Andy gave me, he had one more challenge coin and he coined me and he's like, go show Benny because I don't have any more and he's not gonna be able to get one. He didn't say exactly like that, right? He didn't say exactly like that. It was more tact. It was fun. It was funny the way he said it. But I'm saying this to rub salt in Benny's eyes, not a wound, but in his eyes, that I got this incredible, huge Nikon challenge coin that Benny probably would have put on eBay anyways for $300. And
wow, you're just stabbing Benny today.
We had him as again, it took him how many years, Janiqua, to get him on as a guest? We finally got him. We got the clicks, we got the views out of him, and now he can be our punching bag again.
There you go.
I am not gonna say I agree. I'm just gonna.
That's where AI will make. I'll make AI say it for you, right?
Terrible.
And then that's all we need. That's a teaser, John, for what's upcoming for our January 1st AI episode. But back to you, John.
So then we make our way around to the west side of the Capitol, near the Peace Monument, where the entire perimeter at this point is completely off limits because this is kind of the entryway to the Inaugural platform. And so there's this massive swelling of Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and other people that are planning to break into this set of barriers. And they do it. They get together. They have this huge moment where they're all like ramping each other up. They have this really, I've always found it to be kind of exhilarating just because of almost like the tribal nature of this chant. But they have this chant that they do that crescendos and builds, and it starts out kind of quiet. It usually starts out with one person, and it's fuck Antifa, fuck Antifa, fuck Antifa, fuck Antifa, fuck Antifa, fuck. And so you imagine like hundreds of people, fuck Antifa, fuck Antifa. And then they go. And then they...
He said, right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so then I just love how dogs are so good at like energy. They're so good at, and so then they break into the first set, and then they move up to this platform that there are about five Capitol Police officers, and they overtake them, push them down on the ground, hold them down, overtake them, and then they move up to the Inaugural platform. And at this time, I'm at this point where I'm like, am I allowed to go? I don't know what the rules are here. Am I allowed to go in the direction that they went in? Because there's this huge mob flowing in. So I'm trying not to get crushed at this short set of stairs, and there's a bunch of bushes on either side. So I go around the bushes, and I'm trying to take these really bad photographs of people like rushing by the bushes. And I see this woman who looks really distressed. She's pushing a stroller. She's pushing the stroller up these stairs, and then she kind of moves her way over towards me. And I look at her and I kind of motion for her to come over to my direction because I'm out of the stream of people. And she comes over and she is next to me. She had this really wild, kind of scared, excited look in her eyes. And she pulls the cover off the bassinet, and there's a bunch of cans of like bear mace and wasp spray inside of the bassinet, not a baby. And I was like, Christ. I looked at her and I was like, what the fuck? And I gotta get away from this lady. And so then
you treat it as a thing. People wave and you think they're waving at you, but it's someone behind them. You should have just did that. You should be like, no.
What was that movie? Bird Box?
Oh yeah.
Where people, their eyes, the people who like didn't kill themselves after seeing whatever the fuck the thing was, their eyes are just like fucking puddles jumping in the insanity.
Yeah, it was that same. I think that look is a really, whenever the cards are stacked in a weird way, I think people get weird, wild, and animalistic, and and kind of other almost alien look in their eyes. And this lady definitely had that look, but at the time I thought she was scared and she was trying to save her baby.
Yeah, so, my stupid ass, when she would have uncovered that stuff, I would have been like, "Where's your baby?"
Somebody replaced your kid with all these implements.
Where's your infant?
And I came to realize later on that the reason that they use wasp spray is because wasp spray sprays really far. right? Like Bear
30
Mace does.
feet. Yeah.
So then, start making my way towards the inaugural platform with the rest of the group, and then get to the inaugural platform right whenever the melee has started. So there's this massive crowd of people that are exchanging blows with this line of Capitol police officers, and there's crowd dispersal agents going off. It was just absolute pandemonium. And I am underneath the media tower. So I go under, there was a moment where I was like, I should climb the media tower because that would be a really good photograph. But then I was like, I don't want to get stuck up there. If this disperses now, if this is something that gets dispersed now, there's this thing about cops that I've always known, is that you never want to be higher up than them. If you're higher up than the police during a riot, they're going to pull you off of this thing, and it makes them really angry. Since then, I've had a lot of incidents where, because myself or my colleagues have been higher up, there have been arrests, or somebody has gotten, pulled down, and they don't care if you fall and hurt yourself. So I didn't want to get up on this tower and not be able to get down and be 30, 40 feet in the air. So I stayed underneath the tower and kind of used the protection of the cage to photograph the crowd around me and photograph the people going up the ladder to it too. And then made my way around to the right side of the inaugural platform, or the inaugural stage area, and people are pulling apart the barriers and the stair railing and stuff like that to use them as, these massive kind of battering rams. And there's pepper spray going off everywhere, tear gas, flashbangs are going off overhead. And there was this moment where I look up a lot because I love birds, and I look at the sky a lot. I'm just kind of like whimsical in that way, I guess. I don't know. And I look up.
This doesn't quite seem like the moment. This doesn't quite seem like
in these moments of chaos.
For peace. Yeah.
Exactly. In these moments of chaos, I will often look for the thing. I'm really big into birds and the messages that they bring us. And I looked up, and there were like 2 or 3 bald eagles flying above the crowd. And I was like, oh my God. I hope nobody looks up and sees these two, because and is it kind of around this time that I realized that I don't have filters for my gas mask. So, but what I do have is I have my glasses and I have a face gaiter. And so I'm trying to protect myself from these crowd dispersal agents. But for tear gas, if you don't have a CBRN mask on, you are screwed. It just doesn't work. And so trying to fight against that, and honestly, that was one of the things that kept me from going inside. I did not go into the Capitol on January 6th. So the Senate side entrance had realized that stuff was going really badly, that they had broken in, and then going over to the Senate side entrance, which is the north side of the Capitol, and looking and seeing this humongous crowd of people inside the first floor, and looking to the entrance itself and just seeing all of this tear gas pouring out of it. I'm like, wow, they're tear gassing on the inside of the Capitol. And I also don't know the building at all. Never been inside of the Capitol before. And so I didn't want to get inside and get turned around and be in a position where I can't escape. Also, at the same time, I'm expecting there to be gunshots starting at any time. Like at any moment, either that or a big boom from a bomb going off, or just the sound of pops, and it never happened, but I was very surprised. So another slapstick moment, find this ledge to hop up on to look through that window that I was talking about before. And I jump up there, and there's this videographer who I'd ran into at a couple of protests in Louisville who was there. He had this big cowboy hat on. He had this huge camera rig. And I jump up on the ledge, and I'm in there, and I'm putting my camera up against the window and photographing inside. And I hear him yelling at me, and turn around. He's like, hey, is there some shit going on up there? I was like, yeah, they're inside. And so he gets up on the ledge, and we're both just working this window. And we hear somebody yelling at us from down on the ground. And we keep hearing yelling. And we look back, and we're like, keep looking back. And we're like, yeah, well, yo, what's up, dude? And he's like, is that Antifa in there? And we were both looked at each other, and we were like, what the fuck?
What the?
And we didn't answer him. And then he looked at us, and he's like, are you guys Antifa? And we were just like, what is going on, dude? We're just doing our thing. And then I remember there were a bunch of different moments that I'm not mentioning because they were really small, but there were pictures that were made. Mm-hmm. And I remember, talking to my partner at the time and, getting, she always stayed far behind me and would tell me whenever there was something happening nearby. So I had that help. I had that extra pair of eyes. And there were definitely moments where she was like, hey, there's somebody following you, or like, hey, there's somebody walking around taking pictures of you, or like, hey, this guy keeps watching you. I suggest you go over here to try to lose him or something. And that kept happening more and more and more. And there was a point where it was really obvious that because there was so much pandemonium happening inside and so much of the fight had kind of moved inside, and there was this kind of stable situation stable kind of stalemate over on the Inaugural platform, that if I tried to exit the crowd, that those people who were watching me were going to follow me. Mm. And so I kind of couldn't leave because all of the attention was here. And there was this moment of acceptance many times throughout the entire ordeal that if anybody chose to turn their aggression on me, there was going to be no one to save me. There was going to be no one to stick up for me. There was not going to be any way for me to get out of it. I was just going to have to deal with getting stomped on or whatever else was going to happen to me. So that was an interesting moment. Those were interesting moments that I hadn't had to deal with that much in my work thus far. It was kind of like a surrender to what kind of felt inevitable. And I was really just thinking about how I didn't want to lose these pictures too, and didn't want to have, get mobbed and have my gear taken from me. So started kind of working on a plan of like, how the hell are we going to get out of here? And and I remember it was right around the time that Ashley Babbitt was killed, and everyone's attention was kind of towards the building itself. And I remember hearing someone, as people were starting to come out of the building, like people were being let out of the building and people were like making their way out, that someone started screaming like they executed a woman in there. They killed this lady. They murdered this woman in here. And I remember looking at my partner. I was like, let's fucking go. We gotta get out of here. So we left. Yes.
Interjection.
Yeah, please.
You also took the picture of the person breaking the windows from inside the Capitol, correct? When did that occur?
That was before we hopped up on the ledge. That was what drew my attention over to that window, because there were other people that were coming up and looking out the window and like peeking out. I remember these two like young guys, like 19-year-olds that were there, big MAGA hats on, and they were like looking out the window and they looked kind of forlorn. It was an odd expression, actually. Forlorn, but also kind of, it was scary. And whenever that guy was breaking the window from the inside with the Stop the Steal sign, that's whenever it really drew my attention over that window. And that's when I hopped up on that ledge, like I was talking about before. So there was another slapstick moment. And this was whenever they were trying to break into, after the group had been pushed away from that Senate side doorway entrance, where they were trying to break in, and they were using this piece of banister to try to break the door. And then this stream of riot cops, turtle geared out, came out while I had my back turned to them, because I had passed the door and was photographing somebody doing something. And they came out and they started pushing me. And I'm not sure if you've ever been pushed by a big corn-fed Virginia born cop that's trying to stop a huge riot, but like no discretion whatsoever over who was who. And I remember my legs getting tangled up in that banister, and I thought I was going to break an ankle. Jeez. And then like they had this standoff and one of them was like a smaller black female Capitol police officer, completely turtle geared out, and she was having this standoff while someone was holding the back of her vest, like another cop on the inside was holding the back of her vest, and she was having this stand up with this big bearded white guy. And it was such an interesting moment to see the way that they like glared at each other. There was a lot in that stare. And then and after that, I saw this guy. It's really tall, kind of handsome older guy, had a big smile on his face, and he was going around and he was slapping these stickers on the windows as he was walking around. And I was like, what are those stickers? And he was like, oh, I own this coffee shop in Delaware, and this is a great time for me to try to advertise my coffee shop. No liberals allowed.
Is it at a crime scene?
You're leaving, like you're saying, hey, everybody, I was here, you know?
It's me, Dale.
Yeah. So then, Ashley Babbitt is shot, and there's a lot of focus on the building, and it's like, okay, now's the time to go back to the hotel. We go back to the hotel. I don't know when this happened, but there was a phone call that I kept getting from chief photographer at Getty during the riot, and he did not realize that the riot had started. He was inside photographing this joint session. They knew something was happening, but I don't know if it was right before they broke in. And he kept calling me over and over and over and over again. I had never spoken with him before. We might have communicated in a group email at some point. But it was Win McNamee, right? Win is a legend. He's been his dad was a legend. He and guys of his ilk, of his age group, have been doing this shit since before I was born, and they've been kicking ass at it the whole time. And they obviously have earned a lot of respect. But I finally answered the phone after him calling me like 5 times, and I was pretty much like, what do you want? Why do you keep calling me? And he was like, hey man, I just was hoping that you could check in. And I'm like, what are you saying to me right now? And I was like really pissed off. And I was like, there's a riot happening right now. And I guess he didn't know yet. So, that didn't feel like
great
later
first
on.
Impression. Great introduction to Jon Cherry.
My God. Yeah, it was tough. So,
hey, Mr. Knocked Away, fuck you.
With your stupid questions. You're pestering.
Yeah. So anyway, we go back to the hotel, and it's time for me to file. And, earlier in the day, my editor was just like, hey, just make sure that you file whenever you get back. File everything. Don't even worry about it. I get back, and I am importing all my images, and my hard drive was full.
Oof.
Fuck.
So I had to spend like 2 hours deleting raw files from this that were really important images from the protests, which I don't have anymore. And I didn't file my images until like 10 or 11 o'clock that night. After everything was done, practically.
But so I feel like that's also the cost of like navigating a world that you're not conditioned into, in the sense of the traditional path everyone else walks to get to that point, right? Where someone goes through university, then they get an internship, and then they're like, there's a lot of things that you anticipate in prepping your gear and equipment, and even on stuff on the back end, to where, it's like breathing and blinking at that point. But for you, you're taking incredible risks and jump, and just in life, in your personal life in general, and to where luck and timing is also contributing to where you're getting these opportunities, to where I would say, whether it's in the moment or in hindsight, that's far more important than necessarily being equipped to have an empty hard drive, or bringing a camera that you didn't buy the day before, right, out to the assignment, or having camera straps, right? These, like, being actually there for the opportunity to capture something is far more important than having $150,000 in college debt and knowing how to prep your camera bag and being able to understand the nuances of processing imagery on the back end.
And I also think it's like the difference between freelancing and having a team, behind you. Because, like, for military photographers and stuff, a lot of the gear we get is equipped. It's given to us by the government, right? So as the supervisor, I'm like, hey, do you have this? Do you have that? Make sure you get this. Do you need this? And so there's somebody there to make sure that you have these things. But when you're by yourself, you have to build up that muscle memory on your own.
And also, and I'll say one more thing, John, is I like failures in situations like this, because when they personally happen to you, it's gonna ensure that it never fucking happens again. When it happens to our buddy, right, it's like, we'll forget about it, right, because it didn't personally impact us in a way to where it affects us in the moment, or we know the ripple effects coming. So I think these things are essential, because if anyone doesn't have any kind of bumps in the road leading on their path, and to where it's essentially just smooth sailing, once they finally do have something thrown, a wrench into their thing, you're just gonna see someone have an existential fucking meltdown, to where it's like, this is a Monday morning on a drive to work. For them, it's literally the Super Bowl, and you're like, the math isn't fucking mathing. So I love these kinds of shortcomings in life and decisions, whether it's the ignorance or laziness, right? I think they're super important to developing us and who we become.
Yeah, it was really important in my development as the photographer, the freelancer, the organizer that I am now, of making these really massive mistakes and seeing the shortcomings that came from them, right? Like not being able to file in time, not being able to repel crowd control agents, not being able to know where the fuck I was, because I think that was a really big thing at the time, was that like, why is John not on the east side of the Capitol like we told him to be, right? I was over on the west side taking all these pictures of the actual riot. I was supposed to be over on the east side, and I didn't know which way was east or west. So, there was a lot of the no camera straps, the lack of preparedness, the lack of sleep. These are all things that I take really seriously now, because I remember how it felt to not be prepared, to not be ready, and to be unsafe, and be fortunate enough to make it out alive and make it out safely with just, some bumps and bruises and stuff. When there were a lot of people that day who that was not the case for them, and they were prepared. And so, talk about the luck piece of it all. Like, I was very, very fortunate. And then, looking later on down the line too, I was so separate from the Pulitzer process, right? There were a lot of photographers that were there for Getty, and not all of them had photographs that were in the edit. And I didn't know who was working on the edit. I knew that there was a submission for the Pulitzers, and I thought that was cool. But I completely forgot about it until May 9th, whenever the Pulitzers were read. And when the Pulitzers were read, I didn't even know they were being read. I was taking a nap on the couch with my dogs. And I was really sad because I was going through a breakup. And with that partner that I was at January 6th with, I was, had just gotten done taking all of her art off the walls. Oof. And was, because I was on the phone with a friend who doesn't live in the state. I was crying on the phone while I was taking all this stuff down.
So
and
a depression nap.
I was just, exactly. I was like, I need to take a nap. And then, 15 minutes in that nap, I wake up and I look at my phone, and I have all these missed calls and text messages from editors and photographers. And I'm thinking, did we get nuked? Are we at war? Did something happen? Was there a mass shooting or something? Like, why are all of these people reaching out to me? And, the one of the text messages that, it's going to choke me up just thinking about it. One of the text messages was from Sandy, and she said, John, you won a Pulitzer. Congratulations. You did it, or something like that. And I called her, and I was just like, what is that? I don't really know what that means.
What does that even mean?
It's my second day out here. I don't know.
Yeah. And I've realized sometimes it feels like a point of contention for me, because there were a lot of people with Getty that worked on that edit. And some of the people that worked on that edit were photographers whose photos did not end up in the edit. And they won us a Pulitzer. And they won, it was myself, Drew Anger, Wynn McNamee, Spencer Platt, and
Sam Coram.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll cut out that pause so that Sam doesn't think I forgot about him.
Yeah. No, please.
Because I'm pretty sure my name is like right underneath his on the little Tiffany crystal.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But you know what? Actually, I'm not going to show you the Pulitzer as a flex. I'm going to show you something on the Pulitzer that means a lot to me and is really full circle. So I was just telling a story to a couple of friends the other day. So you'll notice that my Pulitzer is like kind of dingy, right? And no, I'm right underneath Spencer, I think. No, Sam's at the bottom here. My name's at the top. Okay. Everybody, all of our names for each person, theirs is at the top, which is really nice. But mine is like really dingy and has fingerprints, and it's all sticky. It's like real sticky and
lube. Is that lube on there with that? If you run that underwater, will reconstitute, John.
So let me tell you why. This has so many fingerprints and it's sticky. It's really sticky. So
I mean, if we're really tying this back to the previous part of the conversation, right?
It's the insistence that it's sticky. You're like, no, you don't get it.
Yo, you guys don't get how sticky this damn thing is. Like, I could barely put it down when I set it down. So, okay, so the weekend of the Pulitzer celebration, or Pulitzer Prizes, in October of 2022, flew to New York with my mom. My mom was my guest of honor, and we pick up we go to the thing. It's great. We have a great time. We eat some good food. Come up, we do the photograph. People are honored and all that stuff. I send my mom home or back to her hotel in a taxi, and I get hammered.
Yeah.
They had an open bar and they were making cocktails, and I just was just drinking my weight in White Russians. I was having a great time.
And sounds like a hangover. Jeez Louise. That sounds like
terrible.
a horrible next day.
It's terrible.
But great in the moment.
Yeah. And so this was a really important weekend because 2 days later, my mother is a Buddhist priest. And in Rochester, New York, she was being ordained as a priest in that same weekend. So we flew to Rochester and I photographed her ordination ceremony. It was beautiful.
I remember seeing those pictures.
That night, we went to their retreat center out in Batavia, New York. It's this big, huge, beautiful Japanese monastery on really quiet grounds. It's gorgeous. I feel very safe in it. They've got this huge commercial kitchen where they do all the cooking. And they're cooking to celebrate my mom's ordination, my mom and her friend's ordination. They're cooking these cinnamon and molasses scones. They were really kind of messy and sticky and they smelled so good. And we're all sitting around in the kitchen at night talking. And I hadn't realized that this big crowd of people, this big table of people that we're sitting at, I realized I had the Pulitzer with me. And so I pulled it out and they wanted to see it. So they're passing it around and everybody's hands are all sticky and they're all apologizing for getting all sticky. I'm like, no, it's fine. I'll clean it off, whatever. And as it's coming back around to me, they revealed to me that since the start of my career, my mom had asked everyone to chant for me every day. And I was in all of their chant prayer, prayer lists every day. And I remember all of the different harrowing. I remember being shot at in Louisville with like guns, not pepper, like live rounds. I had a really close encounter and almost getting arrested, almost getting hit by cars, all the close calls at January 6th. I mean, all of that stuff. And I remember all the time feeling like, man, I'm just so fucking lucky. And then they revealed to me that last night that we were in Batavia, I was like, oh, these people have been praying for me every single day. And so I felt like a great opportunity to share this thing and not erase away their contributions on an ethereal level to what brought me here in the first place, what I think really helped me survive in times when the chips were really down. So that is why I was showing you and emphasizing how damn sticky this thing is.
I'm really happy for that story because I feel like this could have went in a different direction based on previous stories. But no, I love that. I mean, because he painted such a great picture earlier and justified, no, let me tell you about this remote. And let me tell you about, and let me explain to you what lube does when it dries.
It's the duality of man. We can be sticky for very nefarious reasons.
Right.
Or sticky because we've been, just enjoying our time in the most wholesome way
A tale of two
possible.
stickies.
Yes.
Oh, hey. And then we have a third sticky. We have the sticky icky. But
anyways,
we're going to get sponsored one day. But I love the symbolic meaning and gesture of maintaining it's the state of what it's in, because every time that you glance over at it's just that itself, it's an anchor, right? It's an anchor point for you and your reasonings, your justifications, whatever. And I think we all definitely revel in those kinds of things that we do with ourselves in our daily lives or in major events, that we can lean on those instances and those objects or those meanings and moments to help us continue to persevere. Because as we all know, and then the audience listening to this and a lot of our peers listening to this isn't an easy thing that we do, whether it's a military background, civilian background, protesting, even commercial work, right? There's aspects of all this that's a lot. And there's sacrifices that we make personally and professionally across the board. And so to have something like that to keep you grounded, or to have that anchor point to remind you. I love things like that. And I think as people listen to this part of the episode, it's an opportunity to reflect on their sticky icky object too, Janiqua. And no, but John, so I have a question for you when it comes to the aftermath. And so you've shared an incredible story with us today and painted an incredible picture, and a lot more than I anticipated. And you've told me some pretty incredible things in the past as we've talked about this, but leaning into the the start of this conversation and how people look at you and the weight of being a voice of reason in the room, but also like you shared within the story itself, there's a lot of instances and a lot of firsts that you went through that you didn't necessarily anticipate, right? And I think even in the military, when we go through it, whether we're documenting suicides or we're in a combat environment where our lives are at risk, or whether they're not, or we're not anticipating them being at risk and something goes off the deep end, right? There's a lot of things that as I've gotten older, where in the past I could brush it off to the side and bury it in the back of my mind like Ricky Bobby, and it never comes up again. Don't want to bring it up in a conversation. But as time goes on, I've had times over this last year, 18 months, where I'm sitting in the car and it hits me like a ton of bricks, and there's no reason for any of it. I'm listening to maybe Weird Al Yankovic, or I'm not, but I'm saying, like, there's no trigger for this overwhelming event. One, that in the past it wasn't as heavy for me. Now all of a sudden, unprompted, is a lot for us to manage and process and to get through and to persevere. Right. And so for you on the back end, you've gone through a lot of, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Janiqua, a lot of very traumatic instances where you didn't really have the time to process it. So I guess my question for you is, one, have you been able to process a lot of these very intense moments throughout this event? And after you answer that, what would you say? Do you have a process now that you go through to safely decompress when you walk away from very intense situations?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I get asked it a lot by students, especially.
I'm a student of you, John.
Oh, thank you,
John.
I think we're all, whenever we choose this, we choose to be students of life, and we just want to learn, right? And we want to expand our capacity, and we want to grow and evolve with the limited amount of time that we have to do that here. And it's as our soul's calling. And one of the reasons that I love that students ask this question a lot is because I think it shows kind of a new era of how we think about this work, about the moral injury that comes from this. Even that term is relatively new to the lexicon overall. I know that oftentimes whenever we hear seminars from war photographers, we don't hear about the term, the weight that this has on their families being away, and the ways that they've coped in unhealthy ways. And I've always tried to be really honest about it. I used to drink a lot. I used to drink before I went to something that was going to be real spicy. That night before, I would usually find one of my best buddies, and we would sit on the porch and we would drink a half a bottle of rye, and then I would go to that thing hungover because I had the pregame jitters so bad the night before, and I saw how badly that affected my performance and my ability to do my job in the field. And then whenever I would get done, a lot of the times I would be angry, I would be sad, and I would try to wash it away with the other half of that bottle of rye, right? And so there was a time whenever I feel like the work that I was doing was eventually going to kill me, not because I was, being martyred by, somebody in the field that decided they didn't like the cut of my jib, but because I was going to let the effects of it take me down. And January 6th really opened my eyes to just how much I think I also had a lot of traumatic events later on that year that showed me that my idea of what a photojournalist was an inaccurate portrayal of what a manly, tough, strong man was, which is where you just take all this stuff on the chin and you move forward. And that's just not a real person. And that's not a good photographer, right? Like, if you can't feel these things, you can't empathize, you can't be close, and you can't make the pictures that require your closeness to the subject matter or the people. If you're shielding yourself from a whole spectrum of emotions that are possible, if you're numbing yourself from the effects of the previous thing, right? So I'm really fortunate to live within a community of people that know that I have dealt with a lot of trauma. And so they know that whenever sometimes I get back from something, they already know that I'm probably going to have some stuff to process. And so they'll hit me up, or I'll hit them up and be like, hey, just got back from a thing. Want to talk about it? And that's been the biggest help for me. And you know what it is? It's those same like old drinking buddies, but we're not drinking because they've also had to figure out their stuff too. And so I'm really fortunate to have co-evolved with some really incredible men in my life, and women as well. But it's, it's like this It's men that have recognized the limitations of being hypermasculine and have wanted and changed their ways accordingly to live more aligned with a purpose that requires them to be empathetic and requires them to have higher processing skills, because our communities and our families and our loved ones, our lovers, require this of us too. Otherwise, we can't reach that mountaintop because we're too stunted by the trauma. So I think that for me, like, my process is to create buffers between myself and the traumatic thing, not to shield myself from it, but just to be prepared, have those conversations with my mom before I go into it, and then go into it with a lack of separation from between myself and the traumatic elements, and really feel it fully, imbue myself with it, let the images be an honoring moment of whatever this thing is, this bad thing might be. Try to go about it in a really clean way, not to be ironic, not to be sensational, not to show people what they want for Instagram likes, not to even think about that at all. Just be of the people while you're with them. And I think the intention behind how you go about this is really important for making sure that you can handle the emotional fallout that can come from it too. And then just having the support structure afterward.
So for you, it sounds like it's very community oriented on the back half. And then in the first half, it's just being present and allowing yourself to be a witness. And I guess it's almost like, in hunting, where you're there for a specific purpose. You're looking for these moments, but you're also honoring it. It's not sensationalized. Can you talk about what it was like kind of working into that? Because I'm sure when you first started and stuff like that, there was no, like you're saying, there was no process for what to do with those emotions and stuff afterwards. Mm-hmm. And how has preparing for some of those things on the forefront of it, how has that helped make the community care and stuff that you require on the back end more seamless?
Yeah, so I often like to say I have sacrificed a lot of relationships on the altar of my career. And I had that really important relationship that I lost due to not being able to process the trauma. Neither of us could process the trauma of January 6th very well. And it got really in the way of us. And I was also constantly submitting myself to more and more and more and more. I was in COVID ICUs during 2021, photographing people in their last days and families and natural disasters. And 2021 was an insane year for my first full year doing this work. I worked 189 assignments. Jeez, almost all of them were ones that I pitched. So I was just pouring into the work. And, and that combination of that plus having all this unprocessed trauma, our relationship just didn't survive. And I was absolutely destroyed because suddenly this thing that I shared with another person, I had to deal with on my own. And I was not prepared to do that either. And that was a really hard, 2022 was a hard year for me. And I didn't work much in 2022. I did a lot more than some people in my region, but compared to what I had been used to, it was, and you know what? I wasn't equipped to do so either. I was just not in a good place. I almost have this gap in my portfolio, and that is 2022. It's I don't like any of the work that I did that year. So I realized that the function of what I did suffered whenever I had these unprocessed things. And then my personal life suffered greatly. And I lost people that were really important to me and created massive rifts that needed to be repaired over the course of the next few years between myself and other people who were really important to me. And we had more forgiveness within our relationships and we could get there. So I think that the process of repairing those relationships and slowly taking on a new attitude about this work, the Pulitzer had to ground me. That's a huge kind of yin and yang moment, right? People died, right? Mm-hmm. This was a really massive undertaking in American history that damaged the institution of democracy in ways that we're still seeing the repercussions of. Earlier this year, I was photographing all those guys as they were being pardoned from the DC jail, right? Mm-hmm. There's this historical paving over that has kind of happened at the same time. So I say all that to say that it was a really gratifying professional milestone. And it was a validation of my instincts and somewhat of my preparedness and somewhat of having a strong eye for composition and moments and shit like that, but I don't romanticize it. And I have to remind myself very often that an award like that measures craft and not necessarily worthiness of suffering, right? Like, it's not very often that we get rewarded for our traumas. It's pretty rare, actually. And there were a lot of people that day who made incredible work. I feel like my photos on January 6th were so mediocre. Oh my God. When compared to other people's work. And I'm not a big comparison person myself. I really don't care. But oftentimes I look and I'm like, oh my God, there was some really great work that people did. I often wish that I could just break that Pulitzer to a million pieces and share it with everybody else who was there that day, you know? Because I just got so incredibly lucky.
One more question, just speaking of like thoughtfulness and everything. Like, when you look back at that time, and I think a lot of the times, like, we think, you know, somebody's going to listen to this, look up your photos and be like, oh my God, like, I wish I was put inside of that same kind of scenario. I wish that I was available or there, or I can't wait until I have that kind of moment. And not realizing how heavy the burden is of what you see, what you experience, it, how it impacts you later, how you might not want to be in crowds now, you know, because of some of the stuff and things that you've seen, right? For you, as you were going through, before you realized, I guess, that how much it was impacting you, what was the one thing that you were seeing in yourself that you were like, I have to fix this, right? Like, I don't either like who I'm becoming. I don't like how I'm dealing with this. I don't like how I'm showing up. Like, what was that thing that made you decide I need to make a real lifestyle change in order to be able to continue to do this?
Yeah, I think it was the rift that I saw forming between myself and people that, not just people that I love, but strangers. I've always considered myself to be a pretty gregarious person and very personable and friendly. And I saw myself, because of the trauma, being very suspicious of other people and wanting to isolate myself away from them, and not wanting to deal, because I was dealing with the weight of so much of my own stuff that I couldn't take on the weight of anybody else at all, and couldn't care about. And to take on the weight of somebody else's issues is true care, and it's a next level of care that I just could not reach. And that's really unfulfilling. That's an unfulfilling feeling in life, to have such a narrow scope on the spectrum of human existence and emotion. And, you know, I think that, you know, I've told people often that when I'm around the wrong people, my body responds pretty immediately. If I'm in the wrong community of people, if I'm like dating somebody who's not good for me, or if I'm like friends with somebody who's not good for me, like, I start to get kind of sick, you know? And I felt really sick all the time because I was in a relationship with myself that was really, really unhealthy. And so I think that watching how others reflected me back to me in that kind of isolated, sad, angry state, seeing how other people responded to me was a really big eye-opener. And I feel like I was just kind of in a selfish period because I was healing, but maybe more selfish than it needed to be. I didn't really want to hear about other people's shit at all, you know?
Yeah. When did you know that you were like coming out of it? Like that, like you weren't just making yourself go through the steps to try to heal, but that like it was working, and you were around the corner from like getting to a place where you recognize yourself, or you recognize how you were showing up, or you were showing up better for your friends and people.
Yeah, I think it was whenever I found that I could hang with my mom for longer periods of time, honestly, because my mom is such a clear mirror for the truth that is inside of me so often. She does not hold back, really. I can see when she holds back. I can see when she's not, like, when she can read something in me that is not like, I'm like, what is it? Like, I need you to tell me, you know, I need you to tell me what's going on, because I don't always know. And so I kind of shielded myself away from her for a long time because I didn't want to see what she saw. And so whenever I found that I could accept her interpretations of my state, that I was starting to get better. And as a corollary incident, that breakup that I went through and had to be alone in that trauma, I was healing from the breakup at a really similar rate that I was healing the trauma. So I had these two kind of I don't know if they were intersecting or if they were the same line or what have you, but it was almost like I had to go through this like breakup arc that was the same on the graph. Mixing together a bunch of different metaphors here, but you see what I'm saying. They had to follow the same path, and so I was healing from them at the same time. So I realized that the less that I felt screwed up about this, the more I felt healed from that at the same time. That was kind of how I measured it. You know, I'm not sure if you've ever been through something at the same time that you've been sick. Like if you've ever had, my grandma passed away in January this year, and I got the call the first day that I had stomach flu, and I had stomach flu. It was just like shitting and throwing up for like a week and a half straight, or like a week straight, and grieving and crying every day at the same time. And then once my stomach flu kind of subsided, I realized like I'm still very, very sad, but that initial shock had ended kind of at the same time. So for me, it's like the funeral, you know, like if I don't, you know, I've only lost a couple of people that were really, really close to me, and going to the funeral is important for me because I feel like it's the final, I let everything out, everything that I held in from when I first got the news to, you know, and if I'm at the funeral and I don't feel comfortable enough to open myself up and to really do the last kind of cry, then I leave there feeling worse than when I got there. But if I allow myself to just be there and participate and enjoyed like the last, you know, homegoing, you know, and then really celebrate their life and stuff like that, then it's like cathartic, and I can, you know, move on and still be sad, still have the memories, but not be, you know, not able to show up for myself or my loved ones after the experience. Yeah. I kind of feel the same way. I wish that there was maybe we could start doing this in some way on our own, of having like a funeral for like when you realize that you're on the other side of some trauma that is not a living person, but it is a symbolic moment in your life where you're like, hey, that person that I was before, I'm kind of saying goodbye to them. I'm not. It's like a divorce party. Anymore. Yeah, exactly.
Or a forced retirement trauma. Master Griffin ain't no longer. God, that hits you. Like, I mean, a lot of trauma, a lot of therapy. Yeah. And as you're talking about this and bring that up, I'm just, getting lost in my thought. And so I'm speaking out loud so I just don't get sucked down a black hole I can't come out of, Janiqua. It's very, we're gonna get out with smiles. No. Have you ever watched Legends of Korra? Yeah, maybe. Okay. So Avatar: The Last Airbender, or whatever, there's a spinoff. Fake fan. The Last Bender, hell yeah. Fake ass fan. My brain is moving too fast. Right? The Last Bender. There it is. Get the whiskey ready. White Russians. So yeah, the spinoff, you know, the next Avatar is Korra. And there's a scene in there where she goes into the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, she shows up as her like toddler self, right? Because that's emotionally where she is. And it's a really profound, you know, thing that's happening or whatever. And it's crazy that this is a children's show, because while she's in there, she's throwing a temper tantrum because she can't find her friends. And at first it starts off as a beautiful tea party, you know, because she's sitting there and she's emotionally regulated. But as she gets more emotional and is having like, you know, a negative response to not being able to find her friend, all the spirits that are around the table with her start to turn into demons because they're moving based off of her emotion. And it starts getting scary, and, you know, the wind starts blowing and it starts to become a thunderstorm. And the person who she's with, who's explaining this to her, is like, you know, if this is how you're showing up and this is how you're affecting the people around you. But if you decide that, you know, if you control your emotions, if you decide that, yes, this is a terrible thing that's happening, but I have the opportunity to go and find them, then, you know, emotionally you can be better. You can show up better for the people around you, and you won't have such a negative impact, even though you're in pain. And as she starts to understand that, the sun comes back out and the people start to be nice around the table again. They're not all demonic and stuff like that. But that's what it made me think of when you were sharing your story. It's like, it's not just what it's doing to you, but it's also for you, how you were showing up or not showing up for the people around you. And that made the most difference when it was like, I got to get my shit together. I think that's beautiful.
Tear. Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
I love it.
Watch Legend of Korra. Watch Avatar. Okay. It's a great time.
The Last Bender, and
The Last Bender. Yeah,
and and watch Attack Titan. Attack Titan.
Titan Attack, as we like to say.
Attack. No, I can't. That's a very incredible question before me just sort of dropping in the last one. But I can't think of a better one to go out on than such a symbolic, therapeutic inner look at oneself than that. And I don't want to sabotage that by asking too much. But Jon, before we get out of here,
what makes you a bad photographer?
So,
right?
So that being said, since I am a bad photographer, think that I have this like endless pursuit to make something more of the work than just photographs themselves and create entire art initiative ecosystems based off of the experiences that they come from. It's because my images aren't powerful enough to stand on their own. So I gotta like, how can I make a presentation? Like, this photo isn't good enough on its own. Let's put some other pictures around it so that maybe this has a little bit more context, or
I've had to polish many turds, Jon. So
I think that goes back to your curiosity, though. I think that goes back to you constantly asking why. Why would I just hang this photo by itself when I could do all these other things to get people to better understand the context and ask more questions surrounding it? You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah. I try to be very honoring about these things too. Like, so many people give me shit, like, and like give me their time, and like all of us, like, we have these experiences where, dude, if somebody knocked on my door while the back half of my house was completely missing and was like, hello, I'm a photographer and everything's really terrible here, can I follow you around all week and ask you about all the shit that you just lost? I would be like, hell no. Hell no.
Get away from me.
Get the fuck away from me. Get off my property. Get away from me.
Right. Yeah.
The amount of people that, 99% of people that I ask if I can take their picture say yes.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense whatsoever. So, with these expanded projects, I feel like I'm like honoring this gift of theirs and elevating it, because it's not me. They're not my pictures. You just let me take the picture.
And maybe, and I don't want to go out too off the deep end, but I feel like there's a frequency that we all give off, because I was at Syracuse University going through the military program, to where like I would go up to people and within 10 seconds they're like, come in for a cup of coffee in my house. I'm more concerned if they're going to murder me than they should be thinking like, hey, who's the stranger I'm just going to let walk in here with this camera that he's going to document. Like, for me, it's like I have more concern than they do, which I think it's, again, the frequency and the honesty that we give off when we connect with individuals. It doesn't matter if it's in 5 seconds or half a day. And to where I had a buddy, he was in the Army, go up to someone before I did, and he was like, hey, do you mind if I take a They literally looked at him as if he had like shit smeared all over his face and they could smell it. And they were like, get the fuck out of my face. And then I went up like 45 minutes later as they were leaving the restaurant, and they're like, hey, yeah, come walk with me. And I'm just like, it's such a weird thing to where not everybody has it. And it's something I've put a lot of deep thought into, that maybe it makes into one of these therapy episodes, Janiqua, into where I can't explain it, where I have friends that want it just as bad as we do, but for some reason their frequency's off to where it resonates, to where even when they have luck and timing on their side, it's even potentially working more against them, because for some reason it doesn't land. And it's this intrinsic thing that you can't touch, feel, or weigh, that just doesn't provide the same opportunities that we have. And to where it doesn't matter if we're unconditional, not institutionalized when it comes to our training. Like, you've walked a unique path, and Cesar's walked a unique path, and then the military side, right? It's very different, to where it doesn't matter, but for some reason we resonate with individuals and we connect with them, and their house just got picked up by a tornado, but they want to come with the little food they have and the little they do, and they want to share it with us. And that's heavy. That's incredibly heavy. And I appreciate the responsibility that you feel when doing that, because I feel a lot of us, hopefully have that maturity to carry it and champion it the same way.
Well said. Well said, my friend.
Yeah, I know we'll go on and on forever, but at least here in the recording, Jon, again, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for today. We're definitely going to make sure it's not forever before we get you back, but thank you for being a bad photographer.
Hell yeah.
Thank you for having me on. I'm really glad that we had an audience for our catch-up session.
Mm.
You guys really got a small peek into the distance that we've had, and this could be a 6-hour long conversation.
Right. Easy.
Very, very,
Easily.
very easily. And I appreciate that we've been able to pack so much in to this short amount of time that we've had together. It's been really nice to speak with both of you. And I hope to see you all in person. Janico, it's going to be a little harder to see you in person.
Yeah.
John, just so I'll let you know when next year we're flying over. So I'll let you know, and
I got room.
we can do a
And I-
companion pass, right? We'll do a companion pass, John. You can come over, and we can all. Janiqua, we'll just have to hopefully.
I've got room,
and
and I live
Melissa,
off base,
yeah,
so it'll be
right.
great.
You
Yeah.
know,
There we go. Shit,
why
that's
not?
great.
Let's make an experience out of it, right?
Hell
I mean,
yeah.
why
Yeah.
not? Not to
I've
put
never
the
been
pressure
to
on
Asia
Janiqua,
before.
but right.
You're just gonna have to deal with two cats. One of them very curious, the other one very standoffish. So,
Hennessy.
yeah.
Anyways, everyone, thanks for tuning in. I know we typically do this for long roll we did it one way. I'm gonna cut around this, but if you all love today's conversation, be sure to share it with a friend, family member, stranger on the street, anyone. It would mean the world to us. We put so much into this. We have our guests that take time out of their days to share their incredible stories, and so in order to give us the motivation to keep going, that share, that comment, please do it. Please do it, and we'll see you next time.